due to the ignorance of our host. Parental discretion is advised.
Welcome back to How Did It Get So Good? My guest tonight, Mr. Brian Morris.
That's right.
Morris.
Yeah,
that's right. You could be related to my ex, so we'll have to talk about this after. And Carl, we'll just leave it at Carl. Okay. I'm excited about this, and I'll tell you why. It's been since last January of last year that I was like, I used to have another podcast. I used to have this show, but it had another name, and I did it with a friend of mine. And I told this story about this. It happened to me on the way back from Mexico. And I'm like, ever since then, I said, I want to have a pilot here, and I want to ask him 1,000 questions. Now, we're protecting, your identity, where you work. So we're going to leave it at that. We're not going to say who you work for. But you are a legit pilot.
I am.
A legit huge airline pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mr. Morris here, you kind of involved in the same area?
Well, I had an extreme fear of flying.
Had?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I created a product that kind of got me through it.
Mm-hmm.
I put it on the market so other people can use it. But I call Carl a lot to ask him questions like you're going to ask him.
And I figured that's how this started, because for some reason I've been asking. I put it on my stories. I'm like, hey, does anybody know a pilot? But I just didn't want to get a fertilizer pilot or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, no disrespect to you, but I'm just saying. Like,
Carl's legit.
That's
right.
not what I was. That's not what I was looking for.
I'm a little more legit.
Yeah. So I'm excited to have you. I got 1,000 questions, and I'm so excited I can't even barely say it. But anyway, how you guys doing? First of all,
Great.
good.
Yeah.
Have you done a podcast before?
Once.
Really?
It was for my sister.
Really? Okay.
And it was a similar thing where it was she just wanted me to tell my story of how I became a pilot.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't really know.
Yeah.
And so I told my story, which mine is a lot more unique than most. I've had way more challenges getting to where I am now than is what's traditional. So we can dive into that later.
Yeah, for sure. And then you just how do you even come up with this idea?
I was trying to figure out a way to get over my fear of flying because I had to fly to Florida to marry some friends of mine. So I'm registered to be an officiant at weddings.
Okay.
And my buddy asked me if I would fly to Florida and marry them, and I was like, "Oh crap, I don't know how I'm going to do that."
Is that true? That doesn't take much.
What do you mean? Oh no, it doesn't. I did it all on the internet.
Yeah.
I just did.
See what I'm
I
saying?
think I paid like $10 and put in my name, and they're like, you're good. Go.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And you're just sealing someone else's life just by something you got on the internet.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I started doing a bunch of research. I had 30 days to be able to get myself on a plane. Mm-hmm. So I took this 30-day course online. It was from this program called Love Fly. It's out of the UK. Great program, helped me a lot. And I was taking a bunch of notes. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm going to need all this when I get on that plane. And I made these 3x5 flashcards, and it worked for me. Okay. So when I got home, I was telling another pilot friend about them, and her name's Emma, Captain Emma. She said, you need to create these cards for other people to use. We'll get them printed up. We'll put them on the market, and everybody can buy them. And that's kind of how it came about. They're just cards like this. These are basically my notes that I put into these cards in a professional manner and put them on the market, and people are snatching them up and
is it actually, it's actually helping them then?
Yeah. So, I don't know if you have fears and phobias, but when you have a fear, it's hard to remember things. So I would get on the plane and they would do the safety demonstration.
Yeah.
And I would have a panic attack because I would think, why are they doing this? If this is safe, we don't need to know how to get off the plane, right? But then I would read my card and it would say, well, this is normal. They do it every flight. It's just for safety. One in a billion chance you might need it. So things like that. So it really helped me. I had a woman message me last night who said, I cannot remember everything I learned about my fear of flying after I get on the plane because she blanks out and is all freaked out. I said, well, the cards have all the notes. Get on the plane, use the cards, you're going to be good. So that's kind of it, and that how it happened. So they were, and a pilot actually helped me put these together. So these aren't just,
for sure.
not technically correct, but yeah. So that's it, really. Yeah.
So $1 million question is, after so much technology and the times that we're living right now, is flying the safest way to travel still?
Absolutely.
Is it?
Yeah.
You don't have to say that, right?
No, it's Well, they're actually paying me to say that. No. I mean, when you figure how many thousands and tens of thousands of flights depart every day, going all over the world into all sorts of weather environments, terrain environments. There's airplanes crisscrossing everywhere, and how often do we ever really hear about an incident, especially one that kills anyone?
Yeah.
All the incidents that take place nowadays are fairly minor in nature compared to back in the day. Crashes and things happen a lot more frequently.
Yeah.
But again, it is because of the technology and training. We've evolved as pilots, and the aircraft have evolved with technology to where there are so many redundant systems that are redundantly powered and operated that even if one fails, you've still got a backup and a backup of that in most cases. The training, we train for all sorts of emergencies every 6 months, so we have to stay proficient in everything: fires, decompressions, any scenario, and they throw them at us, and we don't know they're coming, and we have to handle that properly and stuff, or else we're not passed off.
The first time that I flew in an airplane was, we were coming here to visit. This is in 2000. This is my first time flying 2000.
Okay.
Do the math. I'm almost 42 years old. So it took me a minute to get on our plane. But I remember my mother, because of work, she worked for the bank for like 13 years. So there was a lot of traveling that she did. So she was more used to, right? So then my mother at one point said, you know what, screw this life. We're going to go try something else. So obviously we had to come in a plane. So then I got on a plane, and my first time flying, I got to, first of all, I didn't get to sit with them. Because you know how it was the 3 or the 2 and the 3 or whatever. So they were away from me. I was like 2 seats behind him.
Yeah.
And I was already freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is my first time. And I'm seeing it, and I'm like, what is that noise? Just like the exact thing you're saying. It's like, what is this? What is that? And as in my own frustration, I turned to the guy right next to me, and I said, this is my first time flying. And he was like, oh, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Everything's good and everything's under control. And I was like, okay. And then I'm also like, what do you know? You can't fly
promise
this.
you that.
You can't tell me you're going to take over if something happens. And then we started moving. And the second we took off, I was so scared. I turned to the guy again, and he was just like, he was passed out. And I remember thinking, how come, and going back to the explanation of the stuff that we would do in an emergency, I was like, how come they're teaching you this stuff and there's people that are like not paying attention? And you go, don't you, again, my first time, so I'm like, aren't you guys paying attention? Like, I was just like taking notes, like all the stuff that I had to do. And that just threw me off. Nowadays, I love flying. For some reason, I'm like, I love flying. And I've said it here many times. I'm that kind of guy. You guys swear, by the way? Or should I not?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like a pilot.
Yeah, okay. I'm that kind of asshole that, like, as soon as we take off, I like to look in my window. And at one point, I go, all right, at this height, if something happens, we're fucked. Yeah. I always do that. What are you reading? Your own cards?
Yeah, I was getting to where you're headed, and I was going to read the card to you. So. Go on.
So, finally, I get to tell my story. This is what happened to me, okay? I went to Mexico. On the way back, this is in January. So, obviously, the first thing that I thought about was, obviously, flying out of here, they are spraying the airplane, right? Because of the cold weather.
Yeah, so it was winter. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then de-icing.
Right. De-icing.
Yeah,
exactly.
de-icing.
There you go.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it.
Yeah.
So then I was coming from Cancun. So obviously there's no de-icing.
Right.
But in my head, I'm like, but we're going into freezing temperature.
Right.
So we don't have to do this?
So I'm sorry, you were going from
So I went from here to Cancun.
from here to Cancun.
Yeah, and then
right.
from Cancun back.
Okay. So you were wondering why on the flight back they
Yeah.
didn't have to? Because
I understand it's warm there.
Right, exactly.
But we were flying into freezing temperatures.
So the way that works is the airplane needs a clean wing to be able to fly, right?
Okay.
If there's frost and ice and stuff on it, then the airflow isn't smooth and it's
Okay.
just not gonna fly.
Oh, no.
So it's just like your car in the morning if you leave it out, if there's frost or something on it. But on an airplane, it has to be removed first. So that spray simply removes all of the frost.
Okay.
And then from there, once you're airborne, it all blows off. All that fluid blows off, and then from there we have systems in the airplane that are basically like a heating element.
Okay.
It'll warm up the leading edges of the wings.
Okay.
And it'll warm up the engine cowls and stuff so that ice can't form in flight. So that's why even when you fly through storms and stuff and you're in below freezing temperatures
Yeah.
where ice does form,
Yeah.
but not on those critical surfaces that are crucial for flight,
Okay.
because they're heated up.
Okay. So that was my first fear.
Yeah.
Then the thing that threw me off was this. And I'm trying to, obviously, it's been a year since I heard it, so I'm trying to explain it in my own words. They put us in the airplane, and then we took forever to move. And then the captain got on the microphone, telephone, whatever it is,
PA.
and the PA, and he said, "We got a problem with one of our engines." He said the engine won't stay running. And so, like I said this before here, I was like, well, then let's get the fuck out of here, right? Like the first thing is like, well, yeah, so do we do this tomorrow? Let's try another plane, right? That's not my first instinct. We go, well, let's just not be here. This is not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
He said the way we're going to attack this, somebody was going to bring a remote control to start the engine.
Okay.
And then he said we're going to keep it running. He said it was a common thing that happens, but also he said it's not going to be any difference other than while we're parked, it's going to be loud because one of our engines is going to be going.
Yep.
At that point, I'm still not feeling any better. I was like, okay. Huh. Then we started moving, and then he stopped and he goes, oh, someone's coming to check on the airplane. And then we're still waiting. And then on our way to the runway, the person that I was with said, oh, look at this. And I could barely see it on the windows. You could barely see it. And there was like ambulances and fire trucks and all these pickup trucks with like the sirens and stuff that literally blocked the plane from going anywhere. And at this point, I'm like, no, dude, let's not. But all of a sudden, the guy's like, everything's fine. We're going to take off. And that's to tell you that I was so afraid on that takeoff, more than any takeoff I've ever been in.
Yeah.
It's an understatement. Because I was like, I was just waiting for the... And that's it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And so... The problem is without me being there or knowing what they
exactly.
were saying, it's a little hard to diagnose. But I'm pretty certain. So what'll happen is when you push back from the gate, the airplane is typically only being run on power that's generated from just a portable generator that's in the back of the airplane called an APU,
Okay.
auxiliary power unit. So that's like a little turbine engine that's back there spinning, providing the electricity, the air conditioning, all of that stuff. What happens is, once they push back from the gate and they need to start an engine, they use the compressed air that's creating, which typically while you're sitting on the ground, that's the air conditioning. So what happens is that air conditioning air is rerouted. That's why when they start an engine, you'll actually hear and feel the air conditioning stop for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
That air is being rerouted to spin the engine up.
Okay.
So it starts using high compressed air. My guess is that maybe their APU wasn't working, which that is common. You know, it's like a generator. They're very reliable, but sometimes they won't start right or whatever. Yeah. So what can happen is, see, like while you're at the gate, they can plug in the airplane to the airports, to the jetways power for the lights and your entertainment and all that. And then they have tubes that can also provide air conditioning. So that's how those systems still work when the APU is inoperative like that. But then, of course, once you push back from the gate, you can't stay hooked up.
Yeah.
So anyway, so what they would do is bring they call it a huffer cart.
Okay.
They'll bring that out, and it's basically another giant generator that does all the same stuff, but it's one that's parked on the ground. So they pull it up on a little trailer, and they hook that up, and it now provides that high pressure air.
I think he's going to tell us they jump started the plane.
Basically, they more or less jump started with
you know what those trucks were doing? Towing it.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
They push started it.
That's basically what they did. But just like jump starting a car, you jump start it, but then once the engine's running, it's fine. It's good to go. It might be the battery that was the issue, not the engine itself. As far as all the ambulances and stuff being parked, I'm not sure. My guess is that was one of two things: either some sort of a precaution, which I mean, unless you've got smoke or some kind of indication of a fire, there's really no reason for that. My guess is maybe it was the plane next door had a medical emergency or something like that. Okay. That's about the only times at the gate that you're going to see something like that. Like I said,
you were already hyped up, and you saw that ambulance, and you were
that doesn't help.
Oh, dude, I was just like, I already wanted to get out of there. It was like right as we sat down, while they were waiting for the people to sit down, and then everybody gets in, they close the door, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, one of our engines not running.
Well, and there's certain words that were not necessarily taught, but it's advisable to use certain words with caution so that we don't scare our passengers.
Yeah.
Because we know that anything with the engine or a storm, things like that, those are kind of key words that we have to be really careful how we word things so that we don't freak out people like that.
Because I remember just thinking, like, why are we? And the person that I was with, they were like, well, if there was something wrong, they wouldn't let us take off.
Right, exactly.
If there was something really crazy, they would say, no, you guys need to get out.
Obviously, if the engine wouldn't stay running, like it starts and then just just decides to quit, that's a no-go.
But how do you know? But how do you know that? Because now, correct me if I'm wrong. The most dangerous part of flying is the takeoff and the landing.
Correct.
So if you what?
No, nothing.
Makes you want to get on a plane right now.
So, I have this thing. So, I wanted to put this in my cards, but my pilot told me to leave it out just for whatever reason. But I have this thing where I set a timer on my phone for 3 minutes because I know that the first 3 minutes of the flight are the most dangerous.
Oh, okay.
And so if I can get past that 3 minutes, then I'm golden, right?
Golden.
That's when I can start.
Is it really just 3 minutes?
It's probably.
I mean, roughly. I mean, it's just that initial takeoff roll until you're up to at least a few thousand feet.
Now,
there's just more threats during those phases of flight.
And I feel like if something, correct me if I'm wrong, if something happened within that 3 minutes, you're probably not high enough in the air to probably glide to get somewhere else, right?
Right.
So I set a timer, and the minute it goes off, I'm like.
But we do even then still have procedures. I mean, you take certain events like Sully with the Hudson.
Yeah.
Right. He was only at a few thousand feet, and if you've seen the movie and stuff, he basically became a glider and wasn't going to have enough. He couldn't get back to the airport that he needed to go, or any other airport for that matter. But he still found a suitable place to land, even though it was in the water. But everybody survived. Yeah. So yes, in some cases you may not have that, but keep in mind though that the chances of that are so incredibly rare, and we're trained to do certain actions at certain phases of that entire takeoff roll. As an example, what we'll say basically is when we push the power up and we start to move, if we see anything, I don't care if it's a light bulb that means nothing or whatever, we abort the takeoff, because at 80 knots or 80 miles an hour, you've still got plenty of runway to stop and solve the problem while you're safe on the ground. After 80 knots, up until till you're fast enough to take off, there's only a few things that you'll typically abort the takeoff for at that point, and that's something major. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a fire, the engine just quits, wind shear, the wind shifts direction, things like that. But we're taught, and this is the stuff that we practice in the simulator constantly. how to identify those, and exactly what to do to still abort the takeoff, safely with enough runway remaining. And then we say, okay, at V1 speed, which is our takeoff speed, at that point we're going no matter what, because statistics show that no matter what happens, your chances are better to take care of it after you're in the air. Because again, we're trained. Airplanes are designed to be able to fly on one engine. So even if it blows up and quits, and there's enough YouTube videos out there that'll show that airplanes fly just fine. So you take off, something happens, you come back around and land.
I also told a story here once that I had a friend. This is back when we were back home. A friend of my mother. He was either studying to be a pilot, or he was a pilot, or something along those lines. And he was explaining how, just like right now, there was a bunch of friends getting together, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, and they start asking questions, and this kid, he looked very young, and this kid knew basically all about it, right? And I was like, oh, and I just sat there and I was fascinated, and he was the first person I ever heard say, the plane can be up at the top, elevation, and then one of the engines just takes a shit. It will still get. Now, does it get to the destination, or it needs to find like a spot to land?
It'll depend on how far into the flight you are. If you're close enough that the safer thing to do is to just continue to the destination, then you can. Otherwise, and it depends on the malfunction too. If the engine is on fire versus if it just flamed out. So there's certain scenarios where we'll run checklists and they'll tell us land at the nearest suitable airport, or continue. There's not much of a problem. Now, in that case, if an engine quits and you're at altitude, typically, so airplanes can still fly just fine on one engine, but maybe not quite as high, because you just don't quite have the same amount of thrust with one engine as you do two. So typically we'll descend a little bit until there's an altitude where it can handle that altitude with one engine. But yeah, if you're in the middle of the ocean, then those airplanes are certified to be able to fly on one engine for 2 or 3 hours. Now that would be a very uncomfortable 2 or 3 hours, while you're sitting there with a single engine all the way.
For you or for us?
Yeah, for everybody.
How's it making it uncomfortable for us?
Well, if you're aware that the airplane's flying on one engine, and the pilots come on and say, well, it's going to be like this for 3 hours until we can get to the nearest airport.
Now, is this...
It's just going to... a little pucker factor, maybe. But
and this is something that I'm guessing, and excuse my ignorance, you have to tell.
No, we wouldn't have to. But it depends on the. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to know as a pilot. What would the passengers want?
I don't know if I want to know.
That's what I'm asking.
Well, the main thing is it depends on the airplane. Some airplanes you're going to know. Yeah. It's going to cause kind of a wobble of the airplane when that engine first stops.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on if the engine just flamed out versus exploded or something. You're going to know if that thing's on fire. So it's like, in that case, I'm going to come on and tell my passengers to remain calm.
Yeah.
That we've got it under control. We're trained how to do this. Try to put the fire out. It's got built-in fire extinguishers.
Remain calm.
Right, yeah. Just watching a fire, just get some marshmallows.
Right outside the window. The plane's jerking around, and I'm acting like nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Yo, what about that video of that plane that lost the door?
The plug.
Oh, yeah.
Because my entire life, I've heard that something like that happens. We're all getting sucked out of it.
Yeah.
And these guys were just like, oh.
But that's why you watch the safety demos. So even though it doesn't happen all the time, this is the first story like that we've heard in ages. Nonetheless, they teach you those things at the beginning of the flight, so that if that happens and you're at altitude and you can't breathe. So it's like, grab your mask, yank it down, put it on your face, and breathe normally.
But like I said, I thought everybody was like,
just everybody gets sucked out.
I think they were lucky though, because everybody had their seatbelt on because they had just taken off. They weren't that high. But the guy who was sitting by it, he said it sucked his shoes off. Took him right off his feet.
I believe it. Yeah.
And his shoes and phone went right out the window, out the door.
Yeah. And that's why we do recommend that you still leave your seatbelts fastened, even when it's smooth air or regardless of the phase of flight. Just leave it on.
I usually take it off if I'm gonna take a piss.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if I come, I may not have it like tight as well when we're going, taking off or landing. Yeah. But like if I'm getting there, I'm like, I'm gonna loosen up a little bit. Yeah. But then I'm like, I'm chill. But I have it on
for sure.
But for someone happy, you just go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's really the only time you could be hurt during turbulence is if you didn't have your seatbelt on, right? If you were up walking around and you weren't belted in, but if you're
Right.
belted in, you're fine. You're probably going to rock around a little bit, but you're not going to hit the roof of the plane or slammed into somebody
exactly.
else's chair.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder how those stewardesses,
The flight attendant.
yeah, the flight
yeah.
attendants do it.
Yeah.
I go like, dude, you guys are like,
I have a buddy
your
that's a
toes.
flight attendant, and I was reading one of these cards to him, and I was telling the same thing, that turbulence really won't hurt you. It won't hurt the plane. It won't bring a plane down. And he said, well, that's not true. I've cracked ribs on a plane from turbulence. So he was, passing out candy bars or snacks or whatever, and got a chair right in the rib and broke him. But
Yeah.
he said it's rare. I think he's flown for 15 years and only had one incident like that. So
go ahead.
I was just going to say the nice thing, again touching on technology, turbulence is still basically unpredictable, but we do have real-time reports of where other people have experienced it, and other technology that they utilize altogether. But yeah, I've got a real-time map that shows, at what altitude and at what point that other people have experienced some turbulence, and so then we can climb or descend or go around it or whatever. So that has helped reduce injuries and stuff. And even if just based on certain weather patterns and stuff, if there's a chance of turbulence, we'll ask the flight attendants to take their seats and stay with their seatbelts fastened. Some people don't like that because then maybe they won't get their next drink. But for the sake of safety, that's the better thing to do. The other thing I like to tell people about turbulence is it's kind of like driving your car on a bumpy dirt road, right? It's fine. It's safe.
Yeah.
It's just uncomfortable and it's annoying.
Yeah.
And you don't know how long it's going to last.
Yeah, but you're not 3,000
Right.
feet in the air.
But again, that's why I relate it to being on a bumpy dirt road, because it's not going to bring the plane down. It's just uncomfortable,
So those cars you're talking about, maybe movements, noises.
Yeah. So these will tell you exactly what's going on during the flight. So it'll tell you things like, okay, you're going to hear chimes. This is to let the cabin crew know that, the plane's ready for takeoff. So just before the plane takes off, right, they'll boom, bing, bing. Yeah, those kinds of things. So it just kind of walks you through all that. It tells you that, you're going to hear these whirling sounds when they start changing the wings, the flaps and things like that on the and that you're going to feel a quick acceleration as the plane takes off. So these are good. They're great for people for a first time flyer.
Yeah.
So if you'd had these on that first flight, you might have been like, okay, this is all normal. But I don't know. I mean, I love these because they just help remind me of everything that's going on, and telling me that things are normal.
Yeah.
Because I used to get on there and be like, well, this can't be normal.
So where did that come from, though?
Just all my education through the Love Fly group, all my Googling, and then writing these notes down.
No, I mean the fear.
Oh, my fear. Oh, my gosh. From my first flight. I got on my first airplane. I was probably 12. Nobody told me what the flight was going to be like. There was crazy turbulence. I was on a plane, so this was from the mainland to Kodiak Island, Alaska. So it was a small plane. I think there were 20 of us on there, and the wheels for the plane were underneath the wing. So we're flying along, and they dropped the wheels down to land, and I thought the wing broke off. It was an optical illusion or something, but I started screaming, freaking out. They land the plane, and I swear to God, I would never get on another airplane as long as I lived. And we were on an island, right? So our family had to take a boat back to the mainland for 17 hours in rough seas in the ocean.
Oh, man.
So,
But is that because of you, or everybody had the same feeling?
so thankfully, my uncle is terrified of flying as well. So he was like, yeah, well, he doesn't want to fly and I don't want to fly. So we're all going to take the ferry boat back. And so I think if it had just been a 12-year-old, they probably would have been like,
Like, shut up.
yeah, right. But I don't think anybody was happy with me because, I think it was an 1.5-hour flight versus 17 hours in rough seas. And I remember my dad hanging on to one of these poles in the ship and throwing up everywhere. And it was awful. It was way worse than the plane for sure.
Well, you've been all over talking about this, right? I've seen you on Fox News.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I'll be on Channel 2 News tomorrow.
oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'm on the talk show circuit,
Yeah,
telling
yeah, and I
everybody
just
about
saw you. So so again, Lola was
Yeah.
the one that connected us.
Yeah.
Do you know Lola?
No.
He hasn't met Lola yet. She's the wife with a knife.
Yeah.
She
a
does
great name, by
cooking,
the way.
okay.
cooking stuff.
I keep saying this. I had her here for the first time a few episodes ago, and
Yeah.
it was like we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
It was just like we're just laughing. Obviously, we're both Latinos, so we were all laughing at her story of how she got here, my story how I got here, and it was just a blast. And I recorded for like 2 hours with her, and I was like, "Oh shit, might have just cut this off."
And Lola has a fear of flying. You may not know
that's
that.
right, yeah.
So she used my handwritten cards
Yeah.
before they turned into a product.
Yeah, we made a clip. I made a clip of it when we were talking about it because she said that she wants to drink when she's flying.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to know about anything, and I was like, "But is that just flying or whatever? I mean, is that somebody robs a bank and you're in it? You want to take a
She's like,
shot,
how would
or
you
is
like-
it just
Right.
flying?"
Yeah.
And she said, "No, I think it's just flying."
Yeah. I told her not to drink on the plane, though, because sometimes, especially at higher altitudes, and that can, if you've already got a fear, it can really mess with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I prefer to do it sober, but I know a lot of people
Yeah.
drink, right? I've been on planes before. When I got on the plane, I told the flight attendant I had fear of flying, and he kept coming by and dropping mini bottles in my lap.
Oh,
So
no.
I think he thought I just wanted to get like
Right.
blasted.
just forget about it.
And he would drop them and laugh and walk off. And by the time I left, I think I had 10 mini bottles collected.
That's gonna help you when on the flight and when you land.
I didn't know, he was probably hoping I would pass out and then he
Right.
wouldn't have to deal with me, right?
Yeah.
So at this point, are you cured, for lack of a better word?
I think so. The last flight I took, I was slightly nervous, but
Okay.
it wasn't anything like what I have been
Were these
before.
out by then?
Oh,
or,
yeah.
or at least you
Yeah.
have the info?
Yeah.
How new is this?
This is brand new. It's
this
only
is
been
fairly
on the
new,
market
right?
about 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
I was I think it was a year ago. I got on a plane and I got off the plane and I got on a plane. I got off the plane and then I got on the plane, and a pilot that works for the airline that Carl works for came and took me in the cockpit, and we did the checks together, and he really talked me through everything. He told me how experienced he was, and took off, and it was a great flight. I felt really confident this guy knew what he was doing.
Is that
so-
a thing? You can bring somebody in a cockpit?
Oh, yeah.
Because I thought that...
Not
Correct me if I'm-
not in flight. Not in flight.
Yeah. Because I thought that after 9/11, it was
Right.
it was a big
Yeah.
no-no.
It is.
Like a lot of things were,
Yeah.
right?
But when we're on the ground just setting up and stuff, we love to have people come up and
Really?
yeah.
And I
Come
remember
take a
he
picture.
got approval. He told me he talked to
Right.
somebody and they said I could.
Wait, we can
and
take
they-
a picture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get the
I
fuck out of
have
here. I didn't
so many.
know this.
I have so
I mean,
many pictures.
usually
of pilots.
it's more kids and stuff.
Yeah, but
we get
not-
in their little
Ooh, I
wings
don't
and
care. I don't
stuff.
have
But,
kids.
but I mean,
I'll go in there.
I have my wings. They'll give you like
Yeah,
a
they-
set of
they give you
plastic
your
wings.
little
They give you
plastic
wings,
wings.
too?
Yeah, I got my wings.
What is this, Red Bull?
And I gave the pilot a set of cards.
Oh,
I
you
was
did?
like- yeah, he's like, yeah, he wanted some. So yeah.
So when's the last time you flew then?
2 weeks ago, I went to Phoenix and back. No problems.
Nice.
And on that flight, there was a pilot sitting next to me. He was what they call deadhead. He was flying to another city to fly. And he went through all my cards, and he loved them. And he asked me for a couple of decks because he said it's great when someone like me gets on the plane, he can hand him a deck of cards and it'll kind of walk him through rather, and the pilots worry about you as well, right? Like he told me at the end of the flight, he wanted to come out and just check on me, but he couldn't, he had to keep us in the air apparently. But, yeah. So I don't know. That was kind of cool.
How does it work when you fly somewhere? Like, how long are you there?
Depends on the airline you work for, and the schedules that you choose and stuff. Airlines work on a seniority system, so typically the more senior you are, the more you can handpick where you want to go. So if you've been there forever, you can get all the trips to Hawaii where you're there for 2 days or whatever, and then come back, and that's all you do. Or when you're brand new, you're hustling and you're only in a place for 15 hours just to sleep and then keep flying all day the next day.
Everybody that I've not that I know, because I don't know anybody that works at now that it works for an airline, but like everybody that I've heard of that works at an airline, they get like all the perks from it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, because of my wife works as a flight attendant or whatever, and then we get to fly for cheap. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here.
I think the
there's a lot of
problem.
great perks.
Don't you think the problem anymore is though now they all the flights are booked up, so the employees have
It does
a hard
make
time.
it does make it more challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. The flights are pretty booked up because when you fly for free or on a reduced fare, it's standby.
So pandemic time.
Oh
they
yeah,
were
you were
having a
flying all
blast.
over the place, first class.
You remember seeing pictures of people where they were the only person on the plane?
Yeah. How
Yeah,
crazy
I was like that
that
a few times. Yeah,
that's
it was
great.
like 6 of us on a wide body going to Europe or something. Just
That's awesome.
So
'cause
what's
I used to ride as a passenger.
Speaking of that, what's the farthest you've flown to?
The farthest I flew was about 17 hours. I used to be the captain of a 777, Boeing 777. It's
Okay.
a 381 passenger wide body jet.
Is that a double?
It's not the double decker,
Okay.
but it's huge.
Yeah.
About 200 feet.
So
long.
the three.
It was 10 across with 2
Oh, wow.
aisles.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, longest flight I did was from, I believe it was from Kuwait area to Dallas. It was 17 hours
That's nonstop.
nonstop. Yep.
Dude, yeah, I got this thing where there's so many places that I want to go to. Now, I like flying. Don't get me wrong. I like flying. But like your boy goes to Mexico in like 3 hours. I'm
Yeah.
like, get me the fuck off
You're
of
over it.
here. I'm done.
Yeah.
And there's some people that are like, oh, you can go to where the hell do I want to go? I want to go to like Bora Bora and all these places, I was born by the beach, so like all these oceans and stuff like call my attention more than like I want to go to Paris. Like that does not call my attention at all.
Yeah.
But all these like paradises and all that stuff, like
Yeah.
I want to go,
Yeah.
and then they're like, oh yeah, it's only 8 hours,
10 hours
or
or-
10 hours. My boss here in the next month or so, I think it's this month actually. He's going to Africa. He goes there. He was gonna go hunting, and he was like, I think it's like how many hours?
Depends on how he gets
Yeah.
there. I mean, there's nothing really nonstop from here, but if you were to go nonstop, that's probably about 13, 15, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Like, I can't.
So
drive me
even if
nuts.
you went to New York, New York's 4 hours and then another,
You wouldn't
10
just
or
knock
13
out.
from there.
You wouldn't just knock out. You wouldn't sleep for 8 of those hours.
That's another thing. I don't think I ever sleep in an airplane, and it's not that I don't want to, and it's not that I'm afraid, and that's why I don't. I just like I tried, and it's like I just like if I sleep for like 10 minutes. I'm like, all right, let's watch another movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm not the kind of guy that I wish I was. And like, oh yeah, let's go to whatever, and you're like, oh, you're gonna be for 10 hours. It's fine, and you just pass out.
Yeah.
I can't do it. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's a long time to be in an airplane. And doing it as a pilot, we take breaks.
Yeah.
We'll bring 3 or 4 pilots and rotate out so
Yeah,
you can go back and there's a bunk bed and stuff. You can go read or take a nap or whatever to get our energy back up for the next session when we'll be up at front.
So for the backups that you're talking about, you're talking about 3 or 4.
Right.
Are they all in the cockpit?
For the takeoff and landing, yes.
Oh, okay.
Once we're airborne and stuff, that's when, depending on the airline and the rest rules and stuff that you're abiding by, you'll delegate who goes to the rest facility first, and they'll rest for however many hours. There's a whole calculation and stuff.
But
that
we're
they
talking
come
about
out
just
with.
like a room that no one gets to see?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Depends on the airplane, but like the 777 that I flew, it's basically like a closet that's located right behind the cockpit. You open that up, and there's a bunk in there, and it's got a reading light and air conditioning and stuff that you can adjust and try to get a good sleep.
When I was back home, that one of the fancy way to travel per se, like us, right, like middle class, it was these Greyhounds buses, right? But they started to be like all fancy and stuff like that. So when they got to travel like far away, they will have 2 or 3 drivers, but the drivers will get to sleep in the luggage compartment that you get to from the outside of the plane. And there's the bus, and these are legit luxury buses.
Yeah.
But you still have to go from they open that, and like right where all the luggage is, there's like a little compartment there that you get to, and they have like a little bed and stuff.
Wow.
But the entire time it's just like riding there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I might be making this up,
Right.
by the way, but
I've never been
I'm
on
pretty
one of those.
legit.
I don't know.
That's what I was saying. Like,
Yeah.
are you over there, like where the tires are?
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, thankfully ours on some airplanes, it's either upstairs or downstairs or whatever. On mine, it was just at the same level. But yeah, it's small and cramped, but not horrible. I mean, I'm not claustrophobic either, though.
But what's in there? You're talking about is that a TV? Is there
no? At least not in the ones I was on. But I believe on at some airlines. There is
you get your snacks and stuff?
Some entertainment. Yeah, they'll bring you some snacks, or really just they'll feed you a full meal.
Oh, nice.
And there's blankets, pillows, everything that we would need.
Now everybody's sharing the same bed though.
Well, it depends. They either have 2 or 4 beds, from what I know. But yeah, basically sharing it. But it's you get fresh bedding and all that stuff. So yeah.
He's trying to make it.
Sharing
but we're not.
I didn't know where you were going with that, so I was just thinking.
No, I'm saying if Carr goes in there and then he falls asleep, right, and then he wakes up, he's like, and I don't know, drying the drool or whatever, and then the next guy's like, well, it's my turn to go to sleep, and you go to the same bed. That's what I'm trying to say. Where are you going with it?
I don't know. I'm not going anywhere with it. I was waiting to see where you were going.
Is it so? How many? In order to get to work for an airline, like a legit airline like you have to have a certain amount of hours.
Typically, I mean, there's kind of 2 variables to that. There's a minimum amount of hours that's required by the FAA or the airline, and then there's kind of the preferred hours that particular airline wants to see, or maybe they won't hire anybody with less than or whatever. And that varies kind of based on demand. When times are good and everybody's hiring, typically they can set their requirements, plus or minus whatever they want to be more selective. So yeah, it just depends. Ever since the crash in Buffalo, when was that? It's been a while, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That was what triggered a lot of the requirements to fly for an airline to be a lot more strict, that you need a lot more flight time. Now, when I first started flying for an airline, you only needed 250 hours. So basically, you could go to flight school, get all your certifications, and then go get a job flying jets for a small regional type airline. You couldn't go work for a legacy airline yet, but you could at least go fly jets. But then that Buffalo thing happened, and now you need like 1,500 hours. So typically you'll become a flight instructor or do tours of the Grand Canyon or skydiving type of piloting jobs to get your hours up. But again, even then, it's gotten much harder to fly for the legacy airlines. They, because we want them to be safe. They want them to be experienced people. So you'll start out with your first job being small turboprop or small jet jobs where you just do those to get your time, get your experience up, and then kind of move up from there is the typical progression. Either that or going into the military. Military is another good option if you don't want to pay for flight school. Military still takes anybody, and then you don't have to pay for anything. So that's a good option for people as well.
So is it fair to say that every airplane, every pilot that takes us from point A to point B started in like a small airplane? Like doing the skydiving.
Yeah, I mean,
and all that stuff?
you don't start out flying 767s or anything. So everybody starts out in some kind of a trainer airplane with the basics. Your basic instrumentation, your basic airman skills, learning how to land, learning how to take off, all the maneuvers, and just kind of really getting a feel for a lot of the very basic things. And then from there, you add on to that. Then you learn how to fly through the clouds and rely on your instruments instead of looking out the window. You learn how to fly multiple engines. Typically you'll start out with a single engine airplane, mostly because it's inexpensive. Learning to fly is very expensive, so you do it as cheap as you can. Do what you can in a single engine airplane, and then you start paying for a multi-engine airplane and get certified for that, because there are different there's differences flying a multi-engine airplane versus a single. And then, from there, then it's just a matter of the commercial certification, just being proficient enough to be authorized to fly passengers for a fee. And then from there, it's just experience. So whether that's becoming an instructor or flying small jobs, like I said, doing like skydiving jobs, that kind of thing. Just anything to build your flight time, do those reps, lots of takeoffs, lots of landings, nighttime, bad weather, all of it, to just get the experience that the airlines require.
My mother told me once, in order to be a pilot, you need to be good at math. Is that all right?
I hope not.
Thanks. You lie to me, Mom.
Are you thinking
You have to be.
I'm terrible at math.
No.
You're going to be a pilot?
No.
It does help if you can at least
for
do
sure.
some basic math.
Yeah.
But nowadays, especially with the computers and automation and stuff that we have, you're not sitting there having to, divide and fractions and all this stuff.
But it's still
it's basic math.
But it's like once you get in the air, like you're not. Excuse my ignorance. You're not worried about another plane coming your way.
No.
But I'm saying, does that make it go like, oh, I'm just gonna go here, I'm just gonna go here, or is there like an actual like aerial map that you follow? Is there? Do you come up with that? Does the tower come up with that?
It's kind of a combination of a lot of things. How it starts out is the airline you fly for has a dispatch department. They do what's called a flight plan. So they basically draw it out on a map. Mm-hmm. They identify all the points you're going to go to that's the most efficient, that's got the best weather, all the factors that they have to take into it. And then basically from there they file that with the FAA, and that's the tower. Mm-hmm. So the tower people or the center people are going to do whatever they do to make sure that the flow of traffic is not going to be a problem based on your proposed departure time. Mm-hmm. So basically, I think it's all kind of computerized nowadays, where they can kind of say, okay, if this guy takes off from here at this time and this guy takes off from here at this time, they'll be fine. But then you've still got tower people that's their full-time job is sitting there looking at the monitor real time when the planes are actually going to be crossing mm-hmm. paths, and they'll direct us around them or whatever. Now, there's also certain rules. Flying at even altitudes versus odd altitudes, you fly a different general direction. So that keeps it so the traffic is basically always like this. Mm-hmm. And then if there is any sort of a collision course or whatever, not only do you have their traffic controllers mm-hmm. that can tell you, hey, do you see that guy? Okay, steer clear of him. Or, hey, I need you to turn left 10 degrees to avoid this guy, whatever. That's their job, is to help keep us away. At the end of the day, though, it's still really our responsibility as pilots. Mm-hmm. And that's where we just see and avoid if we're not in the clouds, looking for traffic constantly. But also with technology, we've got terrain avoidance systems, we've got traffic avoidance systems, and onboard weather radar, all this stuff that's all in a single map. And so it'll show a little blip. We call it the fish finder. Mm-hmm. And it shows us what altitude these airplanes are at, and where they're at in proximity to us, and so we can use that to keep it as distance as possible. So you have communication the entire flight with the tower. Yep. Does it get to a point where, like, if you're flying to, again, if you're flying to Africa, you still communicating with Salt Lake's tower, or their tower pick you up at one point, or you go from tower to tower? We call them center frequencies, and so it's a big range, several states worth, mm-hmm. And they each have a different frequency, and even within those, you'll switch frequencies and talk to a different guy that's in the same general area. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're in communication with them all the time, and so about every, it just depends, but about every 10-15 minutes or so, they'll come on and tell us to switch to a different frequency and keep talking to the person as we trek along into that next sector. And so yeah, we're in constant communication. And they see you the entire time too, right? Yeah, they see us on radar. Yep. You know what's another thing I've gotten across, and I go, I did not need to know that. And they're like, oh, the plane just got off the shop or whatever. The plane, they just fixed the plane. Maintenance? Back from maintenance, you go. That actually makes you feel less comfortable? Yeah, because first thing is like, well, why was he there? so think about it like your car. Like when you take it to the shop for an oil change, are you more nervous to drive it after that, or more comfortable because you're like, all right, now it's properly lubed up? Carl, I'm talking about a thing that goes 3,000 feet in the air. It's not just, I'm not just gonna pull over. But at the end of the day, it's still just a machine. Yeah, and a machine needs to be lubed. It needs to be maintained. Parts need replaced. Yeah. That's just all normal. That's just actually part of keeping everything working properly. So actually, if it's come out of maintenance, it's usually a good thing, because I mean, something that maybe something was trending, like it had a little glitch in it or a problem or whatever, and they've identified it and fixed it. So yeah, if it's come out of maintenance, that's usually a good sign that, all right, now it's in top shape.
Do you have a car for that?
Yeah, I do.
You do? Really? So the carts also take on what's outside of the plane?
Well,
like before you get in there?
This even has a card like right off the top that says, remember, flying is safe. Pilots conduct thorough safety checks before each flight. Airplanes are equipped with multiple backup systems to ensure your safety. So that always makes me feel great, because I feel like they've put so many things in place that even if something goes wrong, there's a backup and a backup and a backup.
Yeah.
So yeah, and just knowing that the pilots are checking out the plane inside and outside before they take off, yeah, makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
The fact that you guys are getting trained every 6 months, you say, that actually gives me a little more of a relief. I'm like, oh,
Well,
And
and,
even
and
then-
tested too.
Yeah, tested, and that's trained in an actual full motion simulator, where it's as good as the real thing. You feel every bump and everything. You're still talking to people pretending to be air traffic controllers, you know, but you can actually, like, they even have like fog machines and stuff that simulate smoke.
Oh, wow.
So it's very realistic. So that's the kind of training where we're actually in there, hands-on, performing, you know, demonstrating actual emergency scenarios. But we still do training every 2 or 3 months, just online, doing computer-based training and just reviewing certain things. And then we're kind of on a routine basis. Like I'll just lay in bed, or as a passenger on a flight or whatever, be reading some of my manuals just to stay proficient in some of those procedures and stuff as well. The nice thing is, anytime there's an emergency or any situation, we run a checklist, and we do those checklists for added safety, so that we don't rely on our memory and screw something up, because in the height of panic, you might do that. So we always do, every single thing we do is at the direction of a checklist.
So by the time we board the plane, do you guys already went through your checklist, or you guys are going through your checklist, or is that done at that time? Is it you guys check it before we go in there?
We're constantly doing checklists. So when I first show up to the airplane, the first thing I do is a checklist, just to make sure that everything's in the correct switch position, to make sure that all of our emergency equipment is there. You know, the fire extinguishers and the portable breathing units and all anything that we could possibly need, life vests, everything. So you make sure that all of that is on board and intact and has been inspected recently, and just everything. So you'll do that first. Then we'll go to the outside of the airplane and look at every piece and component there, checking the tires for cuts and wear and tear, checking the wings for dents or ice. You know, just doing a thorough inspection inside and outside. Then after that, then we come back and we start actually setting up for the flight. So that's when I'm typing in, you know, where we're going, how we're getting there, how high we're going to be, whatever, and then dialing in everything and looking at my maps, checking the weather, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then we run about 15 more checklists. So
That's fascinating.
We do it.
So is there such a thing as going through a checklist as we're flying?
Yep. We do after takeoff checklist, cruise checklist, descent checklist, approach checklist, after landing checklist, a parking checklist. It's for every sequence phase of the flight, we're doing stuff and making sure that everything's where it needs to be. And then another nice thing too, in a lot of these modern jets, the way that they prevent even checklist items being skipped. Like, you know, let's say it's bumpy and you're reading the checklist and you just miss one or whatever. These modern airplanes have what's called an electronic checklist. So it's there, but if the switch is in the correct position, the airplane knows that, and it checks that box off automatically.
Okay.
And so that's pretty cool, because then it's not only making sure that you didn't skip an item, but that item has in fact been put into the right position as well. And so I just think that's really cool. The last 3 airplanes I've had, or that I've flown, have had that feature, and I just love it.
So is it the same? This may be a stupid question for you. Is it the same to fly a plane that is going from here to Vegas, the one that is going from here to?
Nope. The reason why is because, in fact, we're specifically trained for each type of airplane. So if it's a 737, that does, like, it doesn't mean that I can jump into a 737 and fly you from here to Vegas, and then the next day jump into a 757 and fly you from Vegas to LA. It doesn't work like that. I'm trained to only fly one particular type of airplane, so it's the same for me every single time I fly. And the guys that fly a different type of airplane, same for them. Everybody just.
And so, how do you move on? Is that hourly? Is that because of hours, or you
like to fly a different plane?
Yeah,
it's actually not hours. It's the seniority system.
Okay.
So once you've been with the company long enough, if you want to switch from flying this plane to that plane, you can put in for that.
But that's what I'm saying. If you're flying like what is, let's just say a commercial plane, but it's a small, quote unquote small plane, and then you're going into the big one. Is there a difference in between running both of them, or is basically the same thing?
No, you would go to a full month-long training course.
Okay.
You'd be in a classroom for a little while. You'd be in a simulator for a while, multiple days at a time, learning the ins and outs, because we need to know everything about that particular type of plane. And no two planes really work exactly the same. Some were built 30 years ago, and some are being built now, and so there's different technologies in all of them. There's differences and improvements of how they work, different systems, the hydraulic systems, electric systems, pneumatics, all that stuff is different in every type of airplane. And so we need to be proficient in just one at a time.
Is the pilot and co-pilot, is the co-pilot equal to the pilot? Or is it like a helper?
Well, so what
I'm throwing these names. It's like, because I'm a construction guy,
right,
and then you got your operator and you got your helper. That's what I'm trying to say.
I gotcha. No, so how it works is every flight has the captain. He's designated as the pilot in command. Now he's the one ultimately responsible. He's the one that signs for the airplane. If anything happens, it's his ass. Okay. The first officer is what it's called nowadays, or co-pilot is what they used to call it. He still can fly the airplane equally. So, in fact, what we'll do is usually we'll start off a trip because you fly with the same guy for a few days. And so you'll start off and one of you will fly us from here to Vegas, and then the other guy will fly Vegas back to Salt Lake. So you take turns. So as far as the actual flying, they trust us both. We've both been trained. We're both fully qualified to fly the airplane. The only difference with the captain is he makes more money. Yeah. And because of the responsibility that he has.
You're a captain?
So even I was, yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm no longer, because I just started at a different job, and so when you start out back as a first officer.
Oh, so you don't get the same title then?
Not anymore, but I will eventually. Yeah, I'm hoping maybe in a year or two I'll be a captain again.
Nice.
So we'll see. But yeah, so it's really just that the captain has the final say and the final authority, and it's his ass if anything goes wrong. So we try to do our best as first officers to make the captain look good. So
what about, okay, here's the other extreme. Speaking about plane, is it the same flying? This, by the way, I know this must be stupid questions for you, okay? No. But I'm acting like a kid over here. Flying the planes that you fly every day, is it the same thing as you go into on a plane for the Army?
No,
probably the same concept, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there's things that are just general about flying, how to read certain instruments and all that. That's going to be universal in any type of airplane. Now, how it's displayed or looks or whatever might vary.
He's like, what's this?
Right, yeah.
Shooting in there.
It's basically like a car. Like, you know how to drive.
Yeah.
But to drive a Mercedes versus a BMW, there's differences, but you still know how to drive.
But that's what I'm saying.
So,
is it?
Yeah. It's just that with airplanes, they're more complex, and so that's why we're trained specifically to one type at each time. But still, whether it's a military airplane or a passenger airplane, flying in general is the same. But in the military, they don't have to give PA announcements, things like that. So there's some differences.
But even in different aircraft, things are different places, right? Like the Airbus aircraft, they have what, a yoke, or is it the 7?
Yeah, in the Boeing, in the Airbus, it's a side stick. So
There's Airbus. Excuse me.
Airbus is a manufacturer of airplanes. There's Boeing, Airbus. Oh, okay. Yeah, so Airbus has a side stick. So the captain's is on the left, the first officer's is on the right. The nice thing about that is then you don't have anything obstructing you in the center, because traditionally there's what they call a yoke. It's the stick, almost like a steering wheel, and it moves forward and back and left to right, and that's fine. But the Airbus design a lot of people like, because then there's nothing obstructing you, and they actually have a tray you can pull out so you can set your books there, to read your company manuals or eat your meal or whatever. And so that's kind of nice. Whereas the Boeing products have that yoke.
So if he
But it
moves
all does
from-
the same thing.
If he moves from one plane to the other, he's got to learn, be trained how to fly that.
Yeah, exactly.
That other plane.
Because it's different,
Where the controls are, the switches.
Yeah, like to start the engines on one airplane that might be up here, and on another airplane it's down here. It's everything's in a little bit of a different spot depending on the type of airplane.
So, when you say pilot or captain and co-pilot, when it comes to flying the plane, is it both of you flying it, or is one flying it?
One is flying, and the other one is doing checklists and talking to air traffic control and just doing all the other little tasks. The pilot flying, that's his only job, is to fly the airplane. And even though there's autopilots and stuff, still his job is to remain focused and make sure the airplane's doing what it needs to be doing. More or less, yeah. That's what autopilot is. Yeah, it's basically cruise control.
Do you know what we were referencing? What is it? Airplane?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The movie.
Remember when they did like the cruise control, and it was just like a it was like a blow up doll.
She has to reinflate him. Yeah, it's such a great movie.
Oh, I love that movie.
We quote that one way too often.
Oh yeah, do you?
It's a fun one.
I have one with my friends too. I used to do. I used to work for this other construction company, and all those guys every day it was 4-year-old virgin.
Oh yeah,
everything.
Everybody's quoting
everything. Everybody's quoting it. Everybody's doing the thing. I was like, it's crazy. A bunch of guys is acting like kids.
Yeah.
What got you into flying? Why flying?
It's kind of funny how that happened. So I right out of high school, my family moved across the country, and my mom got a job with the airline I now work for as like a reservations agent. And so because of that, she was able to fly her family for free and stuff. And so I got to do that. And so I would travel all over the country, and I just kind of got hooked. I'd see those pilots in their uniforms. I'm just like, man. Now, at first, I was like, I think you have to be good at math, and I'm horrible at math. I'm like, I'll never do it. I'll never make it. But I got looking into it and reading up on it and stuff, and went for my first introductory flight, and where we just buzzed around town, flew over my house and stuff for about an hour, and from there I was hooked. Later on, found out, I guess I'm trying to remember how old I was when it really occurred to me that my late grandfather was actually an airline pilot and had started out in the military. So I guess it was just kind of in my blood all along.
Nice.
But for me, actually, the coolest thing was when I was in 4th grade, we did a class activity to put together a time capsule. And in this time capsule, it asks all these questions about, where do you want to be living in 15 years? I forget if I think it was like a 15 or 20 year time capsule. And it asked all these questions, and one of them was, what do you want your occupation to be? Now, keep in mind, when I was in 4th grade, I had never even been on an airplane yet. So I had no idea where this came from. But I opened up that time capsule after, I think it was 15 years. And this was after I had already started working for my first airline. And I read that, and it said that I wanted to be a pilot. And I was like, I have no recollection of ever saying that. So I like to think it was just in my genes and stuff all along.
And overall, is it easy? Is it hard?
It's easy. It's like driving, like when you first are in driver's ed, you're freaking out and you're scared and whatever. But now it's what I do. I'm a professional. I've been flying for 20 years. So it's like driving your car. It's something that you still have to be focused on and sharp. But when it's what you do day in and day out, I'm good at what I do. I know what I'm doing. I'm confident in that. And so seems easy. That doesn't mean there's still not stressful days and situations and stuff. But again, that's what I'm trained to do. And so that makes it a little easier.
I've been saying that a lot lately especially when I started working in this company that I'm with like a year and a half ago, I think, or almost 2 years. I was a heavy equipment operator, and I just barely did the move to the office like last July. And everybody just asked me, I was like, hey, how is it to run? Because I was running the excavator, I was like, is it easy to run? Is it hard to run? And I've gotten two things were said to me that kind of make sense. One was like, I play the drums, so I got to work with a guy that played the drums too, and he said, well, your brain is used to every extremity that you have do a different movement. The digging is easy for you because you got to talk. This is the boom. This is the stick, and then the bucket. I mean, and just like you said, when I sit on the machine, it's like you can cover
You
my
hardly
eyes.
have to think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
I barely have to think.
Yeah.
And the guy that took over for me when I took over the position, he was like, I know how to run it, but I'm just not that good. And that's almost the exact thing that you said. When it's your everyday thing, like you'll pick it up in no time.
Yeah.
When you
become
know
proficient.
exactly, when
Yep.
you know you have to get up in the morning, you have to go to work to do that specific thing, it's like you're gonna pick it up in no time.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing, it makes sense. That's just how it is.
Yeah. It's like any profession. When it's what you do, you become good at it, and
Now,
it
when you
becomes second nature.
when you jump in your car, you're like checking your tires. Like
Yeah, I know. I
checking
do a whole exterior
You're
inspection.
checking your windshields before you take off.
There are some nerdy things that I admit
Do
I
you?
do. Like if I'm at an intersection and I can't quite see, I'll ask the person next to me, "All right, are we clear that direction? Oh yeah, we're clear right, clear left." The call outs that we do when we fly.
That's what's
Or I'll
interesting,
pretend
though.
that the car is an airplane.
People don't really do that in other modes of transportation, right? You just jump in your car and drive to Vegas.
Yeah.
He's like checking out every system of the plane before he takes off. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, if you were going on a road trip or something, you might do a little glance over, but for the most part, I think we just jump in our cars and go and just hope for the best. But
Carl might
not with aviation.
He might check all the tires.
Yeah.
You know what else doesn't make sense to me? When those guys are guiding you from the ground, like their movements, I'm like, that makes no sense. Because it's not like, hey, come over, you know what I mean? Like, turn. Like,
Right.
It's not that easy, right?
Yeah.
And so I always go like, what are they
What are
saying?
they doing? Yeah, it's like our own little language. And
Yeah.
pilots, we have our own lingo and stuff too.
Do you?
That when I do things like this, I have to check myself. I'm like, okay, they're not familiar with the lingo, so I have to change my wording a little bit.
Now, have you ever been in a shitty situation that you were in fear, like you were like, ooh.
I'm gonna take my headphones
Yeah,
off.
right. Yeah.
Oh, I hear.
Well, first of all, I'm still here, so I guess I'm
All
not
right,
doing
it
too
worked
bad.
out. It worked out. It worked out.
So at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I'm okay. It only hurts sometimes. No, I mean there's situations that will give you some pucker factor. That are maybe intense or stressful. Really, I do get that question a lot, and I really have I been scared in an airplane? No, again because I'm a professional. I've been trained. I know how to handle certain situations, so they don't scare me. Doesn't mean that if something happens that it wouldn't be a little bit of a startle factor or whatever, but then I resort to my training and I get through it. So yeah, I've been in stressful situations, but I've never had any major emergencies. I have had to declare an emergency before, but we only do that really out of caution. Maybe the flaps aren't coming down the way they're supposed to. The motors in them died or
Just
something.
before you took off?
Like on a landing.
Oh, okay.
When we land, we extend the flaps at the back of the wing to extend the curvature so that we're able to fly at a slower speed and touch down. And so if those aren't working right, it's fine, and it's something we practice all the time. We can still land the airplane. We just might be going a little bit faster when we do it. And so we'll do things like declare an emergency just because there is added risk. And so we want to have the protections readily available to us should anything happen. But again, we're trained and we follow checklists. We do what we're supposed to so that we have the safest outcome possible.
Yeah, I have been in those planes that you the entire time you're hearing noise, right? There's a noise, there's an engine running, and then all of a sudden you go, and you just go,
Yeah, like what happened?
like what the fuck?
I have that in the car.
What is it? What is it? Tell me what it is.
No, it's just literally that when you hear the change of the pitch of the engine, that's normal because they're either speeding it up or slowing it down or they're changing the wing. So there's a lot of noises on.
Yeah. Also, I've been in the one where you're like,
Yeah,
like you
right.
feel the brake. It's
Yeah.
like, oh Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I used to get worried about that.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, did the engines cut out?
Yeah.
You know.
And that's where this product really is great, because you're teaching people what's normal. It's like having ask a pilot in your pocket kind of a thing, you know, so that you can be rest assured that everything is normal and that things are happening the way they're supposed to.
Is it? Go ahead.
Oh, I just had my first go around.
Oh, really?
I've
those are
always
fun.
worried about that. Do you know about the go around? If the plane's coming in and there might be another plane still on the runway that didn't get off the runway in time, or maybe
Just take off again.
yeah, so they come in and they'll take off again. And I had told the pilot before I got on the plane that I was afraid of flying, and he's like, no big deal. So I sat down and we came in, and I was kind of watching. You know, there's apps on your phone where you can actually watch the plane. You can see it dropping in altitude. So I was watching all that, and then the next thing I knew, I felt the engines rev up, and I could see the altitude was going back
You're
up.
like, we're
and
supposed to be landing.
flew around. Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm like, I have 2 minutes left. We're good. And
Yeah.
then the next thing I knew, we're up in the air again. Came around, and he landed the plane. But when I got off, he said, I thought about you on that go around, because I've always heard of them. I've never had one before, and I was surprised that it didn't really make me nervous.
Does it impact you though? Like, do you feel it? Or?
Yeah, of course, because they power up the engines.
Right, yeah, it's
again.
like you're taking off again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
You just never touch the ground, and
Right.
then you're up and
Yeah.
going again. But it was kind of cool. I was kind of proud that I just acted
yeah.
like it was no big deal.
Yeah.
But I've always worried about those.
Yep.
But it
Well,
was
there's
nothing.
there's nothing dangerous about going around, and I mean, you know, we configure the airplane the way we're supposed to. We had the power, and we just take it off.
Yeah, he
Again,
told me
there's
they just had another plane on the runway that
Yeah.
didn't take off as quickly as they thought the plane was going to.
Right, yeah.
And they have to have a distance in between because of
Yeah.
that after air
the wake turbulence.
wake turbulence.
Yeah, he's got to get off, and otherwise, if we get in his wake, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So,
So I think we had that. So he was like, "I'm just gonna go around."
yeah.
Yeah.
That's I never had.
So
that.
he made the right call.
It was kind of cool. It was a little bonus, right? I got a little bonus flight.
That's perfect for you. So now you
Is
know.
that in there too?
I've only done a handful.
Not on that.
I've only done a handful.
It's gonna be
of
in the
those.
next edition.
So yeah, speaking of that, so what?
Yeah.
So what's the next plan for this? Now that you're saying next edition.
There's other editions coming out where we've got like a kids version that's coming out. We've got a First Flyers edition that's coming out. In June, we're going to put out a Pride edition. It'll just have all kinds of rainbow colors and things like that. But, we have all kinds of support products that go with it. Straps for your luggage. This is just a case that you put your passport in. But just things like that. But mostly the idea behind it is really to make the flight as simple and easy as possible for you. And just by having these cards for someone that's nervous or a first-time flyer, just tells them what's going on. It's sort of like the owner's manual, right? You know?
But you're selling them, right?
Yeah, so we sell them at our website. It's flightdeck365.com. And then we have a shop on there, and you can see all the products on there. We have a downloadable version, so you can just download it right to your phone. And even in airplane mode, you can just flip through all of the cards.
So where did the idea come from? I mean, I know that it's because you had a fear, but I'm saying, like, where does the idea of, like, let's do cards?
I literally just wrote up all my notes down on these cards so I could remind myself when I was on the plane that when these things are happening, the sounds that are happening, the feelings, that those things were normal. Because I was always wondering if these things were normal, right? Like when you start hearing these whirling sounds or dings and all kinds of things on the plane, I was like, I don't know, are they telling each other secret messages like we're going down, but they don't really want to tell us? But so I did a lot of research, and then I'd write them on my cards, and I'd be like, hey, all those dings that are happening are just normal. They're communications. Like the pilot might even be asking for a cup of coffee, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's
or
true.
Someone might just hit the button because they want the flight attendant to bring them a cup of coffee. So I don't know. They're just things that I felt like if I wrote down and knew that they were normal and reminded myself that they were normal, then I would have a much better flying experience. And then from there, I just printed my cards and started selling them.
Yeah. So you were just like writing it. It was like, let's just leave them like this.
Literally, they were those 3x5 cards that you might have in school, and I just would write on them, and then I numbered each of them because I was like, what if I get nervous and I drop them and they're all over the plane, and then I'm like, where was I? Was I on
in order.
card 5 or was I on card 6?
So are these? So you do have an order for this then?
Yeah. If you open it up, you'll see each card's got a number on it.
Oh, okay.
So there's instructions and things in the very front. But if you get past about the first 5 cards, you can see they've got
Kind of based on the phase of flight that you're in before you get to the airport, and tips and things.
And there's a checklist in there to tell you, a lot of people don't think about bringing an empty bottle to put water in, because after you get through security, you can fill that water bottle up, right? And if you're dehydrated and you're a nervous person having anxiety, you'll have more anxiety. You've got to keep yourself hydrated. So there's just tips and things like that in there that remind you to do those kinds of things. People that are nervous or have panic can't really think outside of what their anxiety is, and so these just help to remind you.
Some of these chimes, these booms, do you guys do those?
The dings?
Yeah.
Not all of them. The flight attendants, because the airplane, they've got the flight attendants at the front and in the back, and they all have to communicate with each other, and so they'll call each other, and that's the sound. Or like he said, the flight attendant call buttons and stuff for the passengers. So there's all sorts of dings and stuff, and I know they can get annoying, but ultimately it's just a communication.
Because every time you guys talk, there's a ding too, right?
Well, if he's trying to communicate to the cabin crew,
right? Yeah. If I need to call my flight attendants, then it'll make a ding.
Well, I was on that flight to Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. There was a ding, and then I watched the flight attendant pick up the phone. So obviously the pilot called her, and she hung it up, and then he came on and said, I need everybody to put their seatbelts on, put your trays away. We're probably going to have some turbulence. And so you could see the flight attendants hurrying around because they were trying to collect trash and get everybody secured, right? And then I think we had another 30 minutes left, and we never had any turbulence. But I think the pilot thought we might have something here, so he was letting her know, and they were getting things secured.
So is it... You get to see the turbulence before we get through it?
I mean, not necessarily. Turbulence can still be kind of unpredictable. But again, we have programs and stuff on our iPads that'll show real-time reports. And so it's like, okay, if we know that a pilot reported turbulence in this area, we're probably going to get it too. But again, turbulence, though, can vary based on the size of the airplane too. Yeah. Turbulence is going to probably be, in general, a little more uncomfortable in a small plane than in a big plane, because the big plane, there's just more mass to kind of absorb it, and it'll feel more of like a bouncy kind of a feeling, where in a smaller airplane it's more of a quick, choppy, rough kind of a feeling.
Also when you go through the clouds, the plane is always like...
Sometimes it depends on the types of clouds.
It's coughing after vaping. What does it say?
There's a card for that. I don't know which number it is.
Like if you're flying through a thin, wispy cloud, you don't feel that. But if it's a convective cloud that's actively building, then it's got some unstable air in it. And
it's like the plane is vaping or something, coughing after it.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. There's a card in here, something about right after you take off, you're going to end up going through clouds, and there's going to be some turbulence, but it's not a big deal.
So have you sold a bunch of these?
Yeah, people are buying them like crazy. There's 40% of all the people in the world have a fear, or they're at least nervous or have a fear of flying, or have questions about flying, and maybe it's their first time. But yeah, here it is. If you're right after takeoff, right, you got to get up through the clouds, and here's the other thing. There's a card in there that talks about.
It says the airplane will climb. You may feel slight turbulence as the aircraft goes through clouds. And then the bottom says, this is normal.
Yeah. Right? Because it's reminding you that this is normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When we get to around 33,000 feet, that's called, that's our cruising altitude, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into what altitude you cruise at, whether it's the winds or the fuel economy or your weight. I mean, the direction of flight. But in those 30s, 40s, that's generally where we cruise at.
And what I learned through some of my classes is that once you get to that altitude, you usually have smoother air. So maybe less turbulence. I mean, still you could have turbulence, but it's probably going to be a lot more smooth after you get to cruising altitude.
Yeah, because typically, again, in very general sense, once you're above the clouds, it's a better ride. Not always the case, but it helps because clouds even in a big thunderstorm and stuff typically don't go higher than about 40,000 feet or so. I mean, there's some that go.
I've been
to
saying
50
3,000 feet. That's nothing, huh?
Yeah,
That's nothing.
That's stupid. I'm so stupid. so stupid. It's like nobody had turbulence at 3,000 feet.
30,000 feet would be different, but yeah, and at that altitude, we can identify a thunderstorm, because you're so high and it's so far away, and then we can go around it or whatever from there.
So okay. So being above it doesn't affect, or it does?
Being above it generally is going to be smoother, but it depends on how much above it, and just weather is such a crazy, like there's so many variables, and we're still learning about it, and but yeah, in general, the higher you are, the smoother it is, because then all the crap and the clouds and stuff is below you.
So the elevation of a plane while it goes to its destination, does it vary depending on where you're going?
Yeah, because if I'm just going Salt Lake to Vegas, that's like a 50-minute flight. I'm not going to have enough time to get all the way to 40,000 feet, because as soon as I do, it's going to be time to just start right back down. And so that's inefficient fuel economy to sit there and be in a climb. It's better off to just go, maybe to the 20,000 and level off.
So the farther you go, the higher you go?
Typically, yeah. But even then, you keep in mind the farther you go, the more gas you have to have, and therefore the airplane's heavier, and it can't quite get that high. So we might have to level off at a lower altitude for a couple hours until we've burned off enough fuel. Now we're light enough that we can climb a little bit higher. So sometimes avoiding turbulence, we could know that it's smoother higher, but we can't get there. We're too heavy, and so we have to stay and just kind of deal with it for a little while sometimes.
God, this is fucking fascinating. I wish it was a thing where like I could sit down and just watch it. You know what you guys should do? Well, not you guys, because it's not your thing, right? But you know what we should have as passengers? A camera pointing at you guys. Because if we see you being calm, they're like, oh, we're good.
Right, yeah.
That's why a lot of people look at flight attendants, right, to see if they're nervous.
Yeah, they're nervous.
I used to stare at them the whole time in the flight, and if they look nervous, I'd get nervous.
Those poker players, yeah.
And if you'll notice in a lot of the videos and stuff where certain incidents have happened in the past, and they'll play the audio of the pilots, and in almost every case, they're pretty calm.
Yeah.
Even I've heard some real emergencies, and the pilots are just like, yeah, we're gonna come back around and land, and you're just like, okay. Because to us, it's something we're trained for.
I'm telling you, if we go through like the biggest turbulences, and I see you guys like in the camera, and you guys are like, hey, you guys are like, hey, you guys are like high fiving. So I was like, oh, we're fine, we're just fine. Yeah. Or you guys look at the camera, and it's like, we're good. We're like,
it's unfortunate that the turbulence is so scary for people. Yeah. Because I get it. It's uncomfortable, and it feels like you could just be losing thousands of feet of altitude, and you're just going to fall out of the sky. And it's like, but I can't reiterate enough that that's just not the case. It's air that that's just unstable and has pockets, but the airplane is flying through it at 500 miles an hour, and so it's going to be bumpy, but there's still air. It's not like turbulence is suddenly taking the air from out from underneath the wings. So it's going to fly just fine. It's just bumpy.
You must be the most comfortable flying, as in a passenger.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm the guy that I just sit down as a passenger. I'm like, see you when we get there, and I just pass out. Actually, there's times I won't even realize we've taken off when I'm as a passenger.
Really?
Not as the pilot, definitely as a passenger.
Let me ask you something. let me ask
I wake
you
up, I'm like, they're serving drinks already? I didn't know we took off.
Let me ask you this. I always thought about this. Again, back with all the technology, why do we still have to turn our phones off when we take off?
That is a very good question. Because the FAA says so.
I think they're starting to take that.
And that's as much as we're going to leave it.
They at least now say it can be in airplane mode.
Right.
Yeah. So they created airplane mode just for that reason. You used to have to turn it completely off. And now, thankfully, airplane mode is there, so you can still have it up. And now we've even got Wi-Fi. So as long as it's just not cellular, sending out cellular
because I remember
signal.
I was flying, or like I have flown before, right? And then all of a sudden I see like on social media, whatever, and somebody's just like recording while they're landing or taking off, and I go, I thought we were supposed to do that shit.
Yeah. And
I always thought about it. I was like, why is it like this humongous machine? It's gonna get affected by my iPod.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I wish I knew the answer to that, because that's something that is really more. It's they just don't want to add risk to any communications, because we rely on communications so much with air traffic control and our onboard systems and stuff. I wish I knew the correct answer of if it would actually interfere or whatever. I don't know. But the bottom line and why the FAA forbids it is simply to reduce risk.
Like, all of a sudden, in the middle of my Taylor Swift,
right,
I get to hear what his guys are saying.
Yeah. And if I'm hearing feedback and getting interference or something, and I can't communicate with air traffic control, then it's like, well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So.
Taylor's talking about her ex-boyfriend. He's
Right.
like, what the hell? I'm trying to land a plane.
Right, yeah.
He's trying to fix it. What do you mean shake, shake, shake? All right. I can do this in the plane. You're flying tomorrow.
I am.
Where are you going? Can you tell? You don't have to.
Yeah, I'm just going to California.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Is this work vacation?
This is work.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be gone for 4 days. So I go to California, Chicago, Texas. So I'll be flying around a little bit.
Are you married?
No.
So this is kind of easier, I guess, huh?
Well, I mean, I still have a girlfriend. So it's.
Does she hate it?
No, actually, there's definitely an adaptation period. When you first get into a relationship with a pilot, it's difficult because they're gone.
Yeah.
And that sucks. You want to see each other and you can't. And so it's I don't know. For us, we embrace it now because it's like, I don't know, that time apart, it makes you miss each other. It makes you want to want to get home and see each other. And so we've gotten used to it, and to where it's no longer a big deal. And the nice thing is now, the airline I work for now, I'm never gone more than 4 or 5 days. The airline I flew for before, because it was doing long haul international stuff, I'd be gone usually minimum of a week, and typically 10 to 14, sometimes even 17 days. That was hard. That's a long time to be gone.
So does flying for the airline adds to your mileage?
Like,
so he can get free flights?
Yes, you can get free flights.
I wish.
Can you imagine? It's like, just,
Yeah.
the next,
I'd have all the miles.
my next flight is
Right?
free. You're like,
Yep.
God damn it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually nice because that airline that I used to work for, they would have to buy me a ticket on one of the other airlines to get me to where they need to be. The airline I flew for before was a charter, and so they would buy me a ticket, and then I would get those miles, and it was great. Yeah, I would take the whole family to vacation.
So when does that happen? Like what he was saying, charter, is that what you're talking about? They take you somewhere else to fly.
Yeah.
So why does that happen? Or what's the situation there?
So for that particular airline, they'll fly things like the military, taking the troops to and from their deployments. They'll fly sports teams, film crews.
Okay.
They'll even do supplemental flying for the regular airlines during peak seasons, so they don't have to get more planes and hire more pilots and stuff just for the summer. They'll just, contract that out to companies like that. So
Did you fly any famous rock stars? Or?
no, not at that job. So that job it's a charter airline, so it was still a big airplane flying 300-400 people at a time. But the job before that, it was private jets, like the 5 and 10 passenger type of airplanes where I'm flying celebrities.
You did that?
And yeah, I did that too for
See,
about
I was
4
going to
years.
ask you. I was going to ask you. Is that so? When is a captain at the top of their career? When they're flying, obviously not because of the example you just gave us, but it's not when they're at a private jet.
It just depends
level?
on what each pilot wants. Some people want to just be a private jet pilot, flying billionaires and stuff around and celebrities and stuff, because generally you're not gone as much. You've got more cushy destinations. You'll be sitting at Hawaii instead of someplace in Montana or something. So it really just depends. I mean, I think in general, many pilots aspire to fly the biggest airplane they can, and to be a captain on that. That's where the most money is. That's this the cushy lifestyle. You just fly one leg to Honolulu, sit there for 2 days, and come home. So
the private jet pilot is not making as much money as somebody that's flying a
probably not.
plane.
They can still make really good money, but typically the airlines, the legacy airlines and the cargo airlines are where the money's really at. But trust me, I've got friends and stuff that still make very, very good money flying private jets and stuff. So It's still a very lucrative job to have, a lot of perks. Again, going to fancy destinations and, getting fed well and things like that.
Yeah.
So, but again, it really just depends on what each pilot wants. For me, I wanted two things. I wanted to fly for a major airline, the same one that was my inspiration. And I also wanted to fly a 777 and be a captain on that. And even though I didn't get to fly that airplane for that airline, I still have done both now, as separate jobs. And so for me, I'm like, I've already made it.
Yeah.
So even though I still have 23 years left before I have to retire, at least now I feel comfortable with the airline I'm at, that they'll be around that whole time, and I'll have a successful career. Yeah,
for sure. When is a plane too old?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think they're still figuring that out.
Really?
Because airplanes, I mean, there's a lot of airplanes still out there that were made in the 80s and stuff.
Really?
And some of the training airplanes and stuff, those are made in the 60s and 50s even. Like there's some old airplanes out there. But that's the nice thing is when they're properly maintained, they'll go forever. I mean, and because certain components can be replaced, as long as there's nothing with the actual airframe, the wings and whatever, you can replace all the internal guts.
Yeah, did you know they X-ray the planes to check the frame, right? To make sure there aren't any cracks and things like that. So every so often they'll pull it in and check it. And
really?
It's good. They're gonna keep flying.
Checking for metal fatigue and stuff like that. Yeah, cracks and whatnot. Yep. So yeah, as long as everything's as long as the structure is still sound, then there's no reason why it has to be retired. You can refurbish all of the inside stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of the major airlines fly airplanes that are pretty old, but you wouldn't guess it because they redo the carpet and the seats and all that and make it look brand new. Add paint to the outside and stuff. So they go a very long time. It's not until they really start to become maintenance hogs that if it makes more sense financially to replace it with a newer airplane, they're going to keep going and just keep replacing parts until it becomes too expensive to do that.
What is this black box?
The black box is actually orange. So it's funny that they call it a black box.
Yeah.
It's where all of Carl's secrets are.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Let's open that bitch.
Yeah, right.
See what's in there. I know some of Carl's secrets. I don't know if you want to open them.
Well, we can turn these cameras on.
Right.
We're all talking. Now bring those beers
Bring
out.
the beers.
What is it? Is it recording?
It records every parameter of the airplane it can. So it's recording our airspeed, our altitude, our attitude, our just
and communication.
All the parameters. Yeah, communication. It records every bit of data that it possibly can, so that after any sort of an incident, it can. They basically take it and plug it into a computer, and it's going to recreate the conditions of the flight. And then they can see what went wrong, and from there, then they figure out, well, how can we prevent this from happening again?
How big is this thing?
I don't know. Shoebox?
Really?
Yeah.
Where is it?
It depends on the airplane, but typically somewhere in the back.
Oh, okay.
Here's my question though. They're indestructible, right?
Yeah.
So why isn't the plane built the same?
Why do
as
we
the
have
black
black planes?
Right?
Well, because if the plane itself were indestructible, your body's still not. And if you were in a piece of metal that was indestructible and it hits the ground at 500 miles an hour,
Yeah.
it's gonna hurt.
Get fucked up.
Yeah, you might find that black box 30 feet down.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Even those they have to recover and unbury from
The rubble.
Yeah, from the rubble. So,
Are you ready for the stupidest question of this episode?
Yes.
You ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I've heard both, yes and no. Can you poop in the bathroom on a plane?
can you?
Yeah.
I don't like to. And to be honest,
That's not what I asked, though.
No.
You're not?
No, I don't.
No, not you. Can people?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I've heard both. It's like, no,
What,
you can.
do you think you're going to get sucked
No,
out
no, no.
through the toilet?
Yo, those are some powerful fucking. They got.
I know.
They got,
I hadn't until just a couple of years ago. I've been
Really?
flying airplanes for like
You
20
refused?
years. I refused.
You were holding it?
But it was. I
Why,
think it
though?
might have been one of those 17-hour flights. You just can't do anything.
But
about
why
it at
though?
that
Because
point.
of the size.
I just
Because
don't like to.
So, but it's not like public restrooms
Yeah.
or just
Kind of.
or just airplane restrooms.
I don't want to stink the place up and have some pastor walk in after me. Then they know it was
Dude,
me.
when the power of that thing is sucking, it's
Oh, no,
gonna, all the air
trust
is
me,
gonna go
you
away.
can still stink up a bathroom
It
in an
doesn't
airplane.
spray it in the air, right?
No. Although we do joke about that.
The blue
Yeah.
gel.
Yeah. Be like, oh, let's go with a lav dump over somebody's house. But no, that's actually not. That's not a thing.
I have a list
They
of people.
drain
I
it like
can
an
give you.
RV once we're on the ground.
Oh, okay.
They use a cart. What did you say?
I said I have a list of people I can give you.
Oh yeah, right.
a
to
lap
dump it
dump
over
on their house.
Yeah, right. There's times I wish it were a thing.
You're like, how low can you fly that thing? Make sure it hits the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I'm not gonna take you guys too much of you guys' time. Tell us everything about these cars, where they can find them, where can people find you, and the website, and
Yeah.
all about it.
So our website is flightdeck365.com, and everything's on there, and our store's on there, and we're on social media at flightdeck365, and it's a great product. And I think if you're a little bit nervous or a terrified flyer, you should grab yourself a deck, and it'll help you out a lot.
Grab your deck.
Yeah, grab your
deck.
Did I say
and
that?
feel better.
Did I say? I didn't say that. Who said that?
Grab yourself a deck.
Get yourself a deck of cards.
I mean, I don't know if you want your socials out there, right?
No, I'm fine.
Well, thank you guys for coming. This is
you.
awesome. And
Yeah,
I'm sure
appreciate
as
being
soon
here.
as you walk out the door, I'll be like, God damn it, I didn't ask him this.
forgot.
We'll have to do a part 2.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You guys down to do a part 2?
For sure.
Part
Awesome.
2.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be cool to even fly on a plane that you're flying.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I could arrange that sometime.
So, did you know your schedule in advance?
Yep. Yeah. At typically about a month or so prior, I'll be awarded my schedule for the next month, and sometimes I'll change things around. You know, if I don't like this particular trip, I'll pick up a better one or whatever. But in general, yeah, I know about.
Is it like people that work at
3-4 days.
restaurants? I don't want that shift. Someone else
Yeah,
can take it.
basically.
And
It's like,
I'll take your weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I have a great idea for part 2.
What?
We do it in the cockpit. Carl flies us to Hawaii.
There
we
we
do
go.
the podcast inside the cockpit.
I'm down.
while
Love
he's
it.
I'll get us a what is it?
Portable-
like a portable.
portable
a
wire.
portable.
There we go. Yeah.
We should do it. Come on, let me fly it.
Right. Your turn.
I want to go to the bathroom. I want to take a shit. We're like,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you got this landing.
look at that
I'm taking a break.
inflatable door.
I have one of those, a little mini one.
Oh, dude.
autopilot.
Auto the pilot.
Do you have the scale planes like at your home and stuff?
Uh-huh. Yep. I have a collection of every job I've had. The first plane I flew there, I get a custom model of it.
Oh, nice. Like that big?
Yeah, it's about 1.5 feet or so, and I design it to look exactly like that one with the right logos, and then I'll with a plaque of the date that I was hired, the type of airplane it was, and all the way down to the detail of the registration number, kind of like the license plate of the airplane and stuff. So that's my own little collection now. That
I do have
like
some. Now that I'm in the office, I do have myself a couple of like scale toys, like an excavator and a front end loader, and somebody that is leaving the office to go work from their home gave me a paver, which paving is our bread and butter of the company that we work for, and I finally put them out. So I've had them in boxes forever, and I finally put
you
them
got
out.
them on
Now,
display.
yeah,
They're
I got
like
'em- I got 'em on
trophies, man.
display.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. They're
Yeah.
not cheap though.
no,
They're not cheap.
no.
Yep.
They're like this big, and they're about $100 and something bucks.
Yeah.
You're like, ugh.
Yeah, my last one was pretty expensive because I get them just detailed down to the.
Yeah,
You know,
that's right.
I have the windows actually made of glass, and
Hey,
really detailed.
I forgot to ask you before we go. When you do that training, like every 6 months or so, is that in here or you go somewhere?
You usually go to the company's training facility. Depends on the company you work for, but wherever their headquarters is, they have a whole facility with simulators and just all sorts of training stuff. Even for the flight attendants, they've got simulated cabins, and they'll take like an actual piece of an airplane and stick it in this big warehouse and turn it into a training facility. So they're training on actual airplanes with actual seats, and they learn how to open and close the doors and evacuate people. In fact, one of the things I had to do, even as a pilot, was we had to show up to class one day, bring a swimsuit, and we had to simulate ditching. So and you sit there and they play this whole audio thing like it's actually happening, and then they give the commands and we do what we're supposed to do, and we put on a life jacket, blow it up, and we jump out of the airplane into a swimming pool. Mm-hmm. And then they get this whole big raft, and we all have to climb into it and practice pulling people in and setting up the canopy. I mean, it's a whole big ordeal, and it's really quite fascinating.
Let's do part 3 in the pool.
Yeah, let's that's what we should do next time we get together. We should bring us some of that stuff.
Bring
and
the
at the end, we'll pull him. And
we can be the screaming passengers.
Right, yeah.
He's trying to get us in the raft.
Yeah, we'll pretend to be passed out. He's got to take us out of the building.
Yeah, we'll bring some flight attendants for that episode, too. Give their perspective.
Now we're talking.
Because honestly, they're the ones that really interact with the passengers more. I'm up there flying the airplane. So actually, that's... something you should consider is
speaking of you are in there. That's another question. See, I'm telling you, that's another question I forgot to ask you. When you get to see the front view, mm-hmm. and again, we go back to that being your everyday thing. Does it get boring? No,
I love it.
Really?
Every day. Even when the weather sucks or whatever, it's just you see the runway. Whether in fact, it's I don't know. On like a beautiful clear day, you're just like, oh, so beautiful. Like, and just lining yourself up with that runway, and I don't know. For me, it's a passion.
Okay, but what about at night though, when you don't see shit?
It's the same thing. It's lit up and it's colorful. But you see that strip.
But you're talking about when you're about to land. I'm talking you're mid-flight.
Mid-flight, yeah. I mean, if you're just up in the sky and all you're seeing is blue and maybe some clouds here and there, yeah. I mean that's a little less exciting. But sometimes still, if it's a clear day and you can look down and, depending on what you're flying over, you can spot certain landmarks and stuff, and it's still pretty fun.
Hey, that scene of Tom Cruise in the airplane, is that a real thing?
Which scene, though?
He's hanging on the airplane?
They said it was, but I don't know.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Motherfucker, dude.
Yeah, not right.
He's got us.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much. If you want to follow us at How Did They Get So Good on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and you can catch me on Instagram at angcervera.com. Why do I keep saying that? I'm giving away my OnlyFans. Ange Cervera on Instagram, Angel Cervera on Facebook. That's my last name, Cervera. And once again, thank you so much, fellas, for coming. And promise me you will do this again.
For sure.
Yeah, thanks,
Awesome.
Angel.
It's been a privilege.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been How Did It Get So Good? Thank you.